While the death penalty was part of Greek law for some time, it was gradually restricted and ultimately abolished. Capital punishment in modern Greece was carried out using the guillotine or by firing squad. It was last applied in 1972 during the military junta. The death penalty was abolished in stages between 1975 and 2005. Executions during the Greek War of Independence were carried out by firing squad, although when the monarchy introduced the penal code in 1834, beheading by guillotine became the only mode of execution. In 1847, difficulties in making the guillotine available for every execution made the government establish the firing squad as an alternative mode of execution. Both would be used until the firing squad was established as the only means of execution in 1929. Over 3,000 executions took place between 1946 and 1949 during the Greek Civil War. Greece has abolished capital punishment. It was formally abolished for all crimes in 2004, following earlier restrictions on its use in peacetime. The last execution in Greece occurred in 1972. The last execution in Greece took place on August 25, 1972. Greece's move to abolish capital punishment aligns with international trends and agreements, such as the European Convention on Human Rights, which it ratified in 2005. The last execution took place on the 25th of August 1972, when the 27-year-old Vassilis Lymberis was shot by firing squad for the murder of his wife, mother-in-law and 2 children on the island of Crete. Vassilis Lymberis was born in 1945. Vassilis killed his wife, his 2 children, and his mother-in-law by burning down his family home in January 1972. His estranged wife, Vassilis Lymberis, 24 years old, his mother-in-law, Antigone Marcou, 55 years old. His daughter, Panagiota Lymberis, 2.5 years old, his son, George Lymberis, 1 year old. Roughly half of filicidal acts are committed by fathers, though the majority of the literature focuses on maternal filicide. This paper reviews the existing literature on paternal filicide with the goal of identifying characteristics common among these fathers. Fathers who killed their children were, on average, in their mid-30s. After being tried for their crimes, filicidal fathers were more frequently incarcerated than hospitalized. Given the range of those capable of this act, mental health professionals must be alert to the possibility of filicide in a variety of fathers. Considering this risk, clinicians should inquire about thoughts of harming children, partners, and themselves. Vassilis Lymberis committed the crimes on the night of the 4th of January 1972, and the early hours of the 5th of January 1972, at the victim's house in Chalandri, while the perpetrator had 3 friends as accomplices in the crime. His mother-in-law and the children died instantly, but his wife survived until noon on the 5th of January, and it was she who reported the incident from the hospital. The case was a matter of intense public interest at the time. Vassilis Lymberis and Vassilis Marcou were married in December 1967 and set up their home together in Metamorphosi, a northern suburb of Athens. He was 22 years of age and she was 19. After a time, the couple began to have arguments and were known to not be getting along. Lymberis claimed he asked his wife for a divorce before they had children, but that she had refused because she loved him too much. The couple had their first child, Panagiota, in June of 1969. But that was not enough to bring the two closer. The fighting, which took place mostly between Lymberis and his mother-in-law, escalated when Vassilis was pregnant with their second child. 2 years after Panagiota, little Georgos was born into the world, but the relationship between the couple was at its lowest ebb at that time. Lymberis left his home and rented an apartment in the center of Athens. Relatives and friends of the family accused him of living a life of depravity, drinking and womanizing and squandering away the family's money. During Christmas of 1971, Lymberis met three young men, 20-year-old Athanasios Stamatis, 25-year-old Theodoros Kapretsos, and 17-year-old Pavlos Angelopoulos, who lived in the same apartment building as himself. One night, when Lymberis was drunk, he told his new friends of his plan to kill his mother-in-law and asked for their help, promising that they would not get caught for the crime. He promised money and a new car to Angelopoulos, the youngster in the group. One night Lymberis and Angelopoulos bought gasoline and went to the house in Metamorphosi, but they discovered that the children were in the house and that there was not enough gasoline to set fire to the entire building, so they left. But on the night of January 5, 1972, Lymberis, Angelopoulos and Kapretsos bought 3 large containers of gasoline and went to the family home. Kapretsos would act as the lookout, while Lymberis and Angelopoulos went into the house to set fire to it. Angelopoulos and Lymberis had 1 can of gasoline each, leaving the third at the door. The 18-year-old went into the room where Lymberis' mother-in-law and the infant boy were sleeping. Lymberis then entered the bedroom where his wife and daughter were sleeping. Angelopoulos poured the gasoline into the room first, and Lymberis followed suit in his wife Vassilis' bedroom. They lit matches and set the place ablaze, amidst the screams of the 2 women and the children. Vassilis jumped out of bed and attempted to call the police and the fire service. Lymberis then grabbed her by the hair and threw her into the flames, then stomped on her chest so she wouldn't get up while he screamed, "Now you're gonna pay." Upon hearing the screams of the women and children, Angelopoulos suddenly experienced pangs of conscience, and he then took the third gasoline container and tried to pour the contents on Lymberis, who hid behind a door and avoided getting burned. Then he locked the burning house and fled. Angelopoulos later claimed he helped commit the crime because Lymberis had lied to them about the children not being at home. Lymberis, Galopoulos and Kapretsos then returned to Vathi Square where they lived. Lymberis, who had several burns on his face and body, threatened the others to keep their mouths shut about the deadly arson attack. Stamatis, who had no part in the actual crime, was asked to burn the clothes used by Lymberis and Angelopoulos so they could not be used as evidence in case if they were arrested. Vassilis Markou's brother-in-law, Antonis Strogilaudis, just happened to pass by the house after the attack and saw smoke pouring out the windows. He rushed in and found his mother-in-law and the 2 children already dead, but Markou, despite suffering severe burns, was still alive. Strogilaudis called the fire service and police. Markou was taken to the hospital, where she died that same day. But before she passed, she was able to tell a relative that the man who set the house on fire was her husband. Socrates Kapsaskis, the chief of Greece's forensic department at the time, declared after performing the autopsies on the victims, "This is the most horrendous crime ever committed in Greece. I have not seen a more horrific crime in my 30 years as a forensic doctor." When police took Lymberis to the station after hearing the testimony of his wife's relative, he still believed that his wife was already dead when he had left the house. The burns on his face and body, combined with her relative's testimony, were enough to invalidate his feeble alibi, so he then confessed to the horrific crime. His 2 accomplices confessed as well. Lymberis' trial commenced on May 5, 1972, with the defendant using as an excuse that the cause of all the problems in his marriage was his mother-in-law. Vassilis Lymberis claimed that he believed if his home were burned down, his wife and children would leave and come to stay with him. He flatly denied that he knew Vassilis and the children were at home that night. The remaining defendants admitted guilt in the case and apologized to the victim's family. The court issued its ruling at noon on Sunday, May 7, 1972. Lymberis and Angelopoulos would receive 4 separate death sentences. Kapretsos would be sentenced to life in prison, and Stamatis would get 3 years in prison. The assembled friends and family of the victims in the courtroom applauded wildly upon the reading of the sentences. Vassilis Lymberis was initially transferred to the Aegina prisons, where he was held in a special cell in fear that the other prisoners would abuse or kill him for his horrendous crimes. He was then taken to the new Halikarnassos prison in Heraklion, Crete. His subsequent request for pardon was rejected. At 5:50 a.m. on Friday, August 25, 1972, Lymberis was led to the mountainous area of Dioeorokia, to the shooting range used by the infantry regiment officers' school. He was accompanied by 2 priests, who gave him his last Holy Communion. Prosecutor Antonis Nikolopoulos asked Lymberis if he had a last statement to make, but the prisoner, continuing to keep his head bent down, said that he did not. Lymberis was then executed by a 12-member firing squad. Only 6 of the 12 rifles had real bullets, the others had blanks so that the soldiers would not have the burden on their consciences that it was their bullet that had killed a man. His body was then buried in Nea Halikarnassos. Angelopoulos was not executed, since he had not yet become 18 years of age. His execution was then suspended, and in 1975 his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. He was granted pardon and released after 20 years in prison in the early 1990s. Vassilis Lymberis was the last person to be executed for any crime in Greece. Capital punishment was abolished for crimes other than high treason during wartime, in Article 7 of the Greek Constitution, which was ratified in 1975. In 1997, Greece ratified the second optional protocol to the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, aiming for the international abolition of the death penalty. Protocol number 6 of the European Convention on Human Rights, providing for the abolition of the death penalty in peacetime, was passed in 1998. Greece abolished the death penalty for all crimes, even for treason during wartime, in 2004. In 2005, Greece ratified Protocol number 13 of the ECR, concerning the abolition of the death penalty under any and all circumstances. Vassilis Lymberis was 27 years old at the time of his execution. Thank you for watching Death Row.